Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Thursday, July 23rd, and this week we are highlighting the Driver Spotlight Series. And as always, Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And with me today, I have the creator of the Driver Spotlight Series, Teddi Burgess. Teddi, love to have you on the show. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Jared. Thanks for having me. It's weird to have you in my position, and I'm at home relaxing. So
right, you need a break. You are really hammering out these interviews and talking to drivers and delivery. We'll get into that. So honestly, great work all around. People who watch This Week in Rideshare, follow us on Instagram, and I'm sure they're seeing it. And I know I personally love the stories because every time I have no idea what's coming out of these stories. They're great.
well, thanks. It's been really exciting, and I love how it's still moving forward and evolving every week. So it's great.
Awesome. Yeah, and so I just want to again just sort of cover the general of what the Spotlight Series is and how it's going, and just for people who don't know, who haven't seen it or are interested in being part of it, I think that would be great to have even more drivers, delivery, gig workers on it. So if you could just first explain, what is the Driver Spotlight Series and what are you doing?
Well, the Driver Spotlight Series is basically a celebration of the people that do this job. Most passengers, they only see drivers for 15, 20 minutes. They don't know anything about them. So I have tried to focus this on interviews and some professional photography where we give drivers a chance to tell us their journey, to tell us their story, like who they are, where they're from, and, trying to recognize them as people, not just as someone who just picks you up and drops you off, but, who are these people? What are their dreams? How did they get into rideshare? All of those things are covered in whatever people want to talk about and let me know about them. Great. That's kind of what the series is about. We put it on social media. We do present it in all the Facebook groups across, the citywide Facebook platforms. So you can find it pretty much anywhere. We also have it on the Legal Rideshare pages also. So yeah, you can read about your fellow drivers and really get to know them. And it's really funny because as you read about these people, you're going to find that you have a lot more in common with them than you thought.
Right, and you yourself have a pretty interesting background as this came about, and I'd love for you to explain, just your background both in the community and professionally in what you do. I think the two really work together to make this series happen.
Yeah, so my background is I was a choreographer and I ran a dance company. I was an artistic director for almost 25 years out in the Rockford area. And then I decided to move to Chicago to be closer to my son and started driving Uber. And that was in 2017. And then I took advantage of the Uber ASU scholarship program and went back to college. I got my fine arts degree in digital photography. I completed all 4 years through the ASU scholarship program, which is another topic for another day, but it is wonderful. And I was very happy to have that. Then I also worked for a nonprofit here in the Chicago area where we worked with Uber and Lyft drivers. We did everything from wellness programs. I worked on deactivations. So I've stayed in the rideshare community most of the time since I arrived here in Chicago. And now I've been given this wonderful opportunity to use my creative background and do this driver spotlight with Legal Rideshare. So it kind of brings it all together, a rideshare driver, and I'm still driving Uber to this day. A rideshare driver who wants to be a creative is getting a chance to meet other drivers, hear their stories, and try to present them as, somebody like me who evolved through the rideshare world. And yeah, that's who I am and why I'm doing this.
Which is great, and this is the second version of this. We had done a short intro of the Driver Spotlight series a couple months ago. You had just started it at that point. I think there was just 3 or 4 that you had people you had interviewed. Well, since then, I know it has been a lot more interviews, a huge range of people that you have interviewed, and I would just love to know, what are some memorable interviews or experiences you've had since the beginning of this whole journey?
Well, there's been pretty much every one of them has been very special. I've made really good friends. I've gotten to know people that I've actually known in the rideshare community for a long time in a more intimate level. Some of them are my friends, but I do have to tell you about my one interview that just kind of, for some reason, something in my creative brain said, stop. I was doing Uber downtown and saw a whole bunch of the delivery drivers out at the old, I call it the rock and roll McDonald's, old school. And I pulled in and I thought, you've got your camera in the car. Why don't you just get out and start talking to these guys? So I went up to these 2 gentlemen, and at first it was a little awkward. They were like, who are you? And why are you talking to us? What is this all about? So we started talking, had this nice conversation. And then I found out their names are Red and Ezekiel. I will remember them to this day. What wonderful people they were, how they have been doing deliveries on. One of them had just an old school bike. He had over 20,000 deliveries on his bicycle. And the other one, Ezekiel, has one of these new e-bikes. So we kind of talked about the new e-bike, legislation that has just passed. And they really dove in, got me some really great photos. It was just, I'm like, what am I doing here? But there's a whole nother world of these delivery drivers. And now that there is this legislation, I think it's really important that we, include them in this community of what we would consider rideshare workers, because they're out there killing it. But that was a really interesting day, Jared. And like I said, at first it was really awkward. They're like, what's this old lady doing stopping money? Crap. And then I got some great photos. And I am going to go back down and try to find them. They're like, yeah, we're here every day. We know everybody here. And, so I'm going to stop in and maybe buy them lunch or something just to thank them. But they were really cool. And I learned a lot. About, their on-time deliveries and, the things that they have to work through, and just the physical demand of, riding through the city, and avoiding cars and everything that they deal with. I was so impressed with that community that I really enjoyed that interview. That one I'll never forget.
Yeah, I love reading about that. You had given me a heads up that, hey, I had met these guys. They're awesome. Is it cool if we do this? You think it would work? And I was like, absolutely. And we did. In fact, you actually gave us the heads up about, what they were going through, and plus the laws that were coming pretty much down the line. And then we talked about it on the previous This Week in Rideshare with Bryant. And so, yeah, I agree. There is a huge other world there with these delivery riders on the bikes, traditional bikes, and then the e-bikes. And I couldn't agree with you more. They go through a lot, through the weather, through everything. And now there's additional, laws and ordinances they're going to have to deal with. So it's a really interesting time, and it was great to hear their side of the story and how they've been going through this and through delivery. So I absolutely loved it. And I'm glad you did it. I think that was great. And it actually is a great segue to my next question. How, if people are interested in getting interviewed by you, I know you're not always going to jump out and grab someone. So if they're interested, how do they get a hold of you, or how do you do the interviews?
Yeah, so when they see the story posted online, if they just want to put their name down or even just like it, some people just, they're reading through things and they're scrolling. They're like, oh, that's really cool. And they'll hit the like button. I'll try to reach out to them and just ask them if they'd be interested in an interview. So a comment or a like or anything like that. They can also reach out to me at my email, which is Teddi Burgess Photography, and that's TEDDI BURGESS photography at gmail.com. And I also believe that they can reach out to help at LegalRideshare.com. So either one of those email addresses will work, and maybe you can put that in the notes for them. But yeah, usually just a like or a comment or something like that. I usually can see those, and then I'll just reach out to the driver and do it that way.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you, Teddi, so much for your time. You really are a rock star, and I really look forward to the next story. Is there any hints? Do you know when the next one's coming, or anything we should look out for?
Yeah, I just sent you one yesterday, and this is the first time that I've done a second photograph, which was
Ooh.
really cool. So this is a friend, David, and he came in and did his interview. He rode up on his motorcycle, and then we started doing the interview, and he told me that the first thing he had done to get involved in rideshare was deliveries from his motorcycle. And I was like, So I went out and I said, hey, can I take a photo of you on your motorcycle? And I got this great photo, and it went right into the page really nice. I did a really nice black and white of it. And he looks like, easy rider, cool dude. But yeah, so that's the next one that's coming up, and people can see that. And yeah, so just reach out to me and we'll get going and we'll get you in, and would love to meet you. And remember, this series is about spotlighting you, the driver, and letting people know who you are and hearing your stories.
Right. Well, thank you again so much, Teddi. And of course, before we wrap up here, this is usually where Bryant does his point, but I will do the shameless plug about Legal Rideshare. If you are a driver or passenger, victim, pedestrian, doesn't matter. If you're involved in an accident or injury, definitely do not hesitate to contact us, LegalRideshare.com. We're actually the first law firm in the U.S. that is entirely dedicated to accidents, injuries, that sort of thing. We're always happy to help, always happy to give you advice, even if it's something that we can't officially take on as a case. We're always there to help you out. But as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.